Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, if you're joining us from North America. Thank you so much for joining us today for the TMA Now, TMA UK, and TMA Europe Power Hour celebrating International Women's Day this year. Just before we pass on to our speakers, I just wanted to give you a couple of housekeeping reminders. We're all familiar. We are recording this session and it will be available on our YouTube channel after the event. Please do share any questions you want to put to the panel into the chat box, and that'll be moderated during the session. We'll also be having a breakout session after the panel have concluded, so please stay around and join us for that if you're able. Just like to share our disclaimer with you, give you a couple of seconds to glance at that. And then I'm going to hand you over to Anna, who will start the introductions.
Hello, I'm Anna Nolan. I'm the chair of TMA Europe now. I'm excited that you're able to join us today. I will make a quick introduction to the panelists today. Millie Chow, she is joining us from Canada. She's a partner in Blake's Toronto office and has extensive expertise in complex and multi-jurisdictional financial restructurings and distressed mergers and acquisitions involving restructuring matters across Canada and also abroad. In 2023, Millie received an honorary introduction into the TMA Turnaround Restructuring and Distressed Investing Industry Hall of Fame. In 2022, Millie was recognized by the TMA Toronto chapter for her dedication and commitment to TMA and her contributions to women in restructuring. Millie has had several senior executive positions with the Turnaround Management Association, including as global chair in 2018 and global president in 2017. She's also a director on the board of directors of Insolvency Institute of Canada. Our second speaker, Donatella Cungi. She's joining from Italy. She's a partner at Studio Tofoletto. She's a board member of TMA Italy and an employment lawyer. She specializes in turnarounds. She provides high-level preemptive legal support in multiple languages with a focus on employment law, contract drafting, and union negotiation. Donatella is extremely passionate about gender and diversity issues in the workspace. She's an author of several articles and publications and a professor of comparative law at Creighton Law School, Omaha, USA. And now I would like to hand over to Tayyiba Arif. She is the chair of TMA Now UK. Yeah, this webinar is organized in cooperation with TMA UK. So thank you to the UK for support.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning or good afternoon to all our participants. I am Tayyiba Arif, counsel in the financial restructuring team at Deckert. And we are delighted to welcome you to our global TMA Now webinar today in celebration of this year's International Women's Day. To briefly introduce our remaining panelists, we have Heidi Sorvino from the US. She's a leading lawyer in the financial restructuring and bankruptcy space. She is the managing partner of White & Williams New York office and also serves as the co-chair of the financial restructuring and bankruptcy practice. She represents creditors and debtors to all phases of bankruptcy proceedings inside and outside the courtroom. Heidi's the chairperson of TMA New York City chapter, immediate past president of TMA NYC chapter, and prior to this served as president-elect. She's also served on the TMA's Global Board of Trustees and as co-chair of New York's chapter of International Women's Insolvency or Restructuring Confederation, IWORK. Lastly, but certainly not the least, we have Joanne Rumley from the UK. She's the head of the restructuring and insolvency at Foote Anstey and works with a broad range of businesses, directors, stakeholders, and other professional advisors. She works closely with distressed equity and debt investors, as well as with turnaround professionals and insolvency practitioners. Joanne is the president of TMA UK. She's also the national director of Insolvency Lawyers Association, and more locally, a board member of the West of England Local Enterprise Partnership. Joanne is passionate about the importance of business inclusion and diversity, and also supports Foot and Steve's work in this area. Before I hand over to our moderator, just want to touch on the theme for this year. The theme for this year's International Women's Day is to inspire inclusion, which calls for action to break down barriers, challenge stereotypes, and create environments where all women are valued and respected. Our panel session will focus on giving advice in the restructuring sphere with the hope of inspiring the next generation of leader, keeping in mind this year's theme of inspiring inclusion. I will now hand over to our moderator, Helen Martin. Helen is can we hand over to Helen now?
Yes. Hi, thank you, Tabor and Anna, for the introduction. I'm a senior associate at Stevens and Bolton in the restructuring and insolvency team there. So as you've heard, we have a really remarkable panel of women today who've all made significant contributions in this sector. Before we delve into their advice for the next generation, I thought it would be great to begin by hearing a brief overview from each of them of their personal career journey and any pivotal moments or inspirations along the way. So can we start with Joanne, please?
You can indeed. So hello, everybody. It's an absolute delight to be here, and such an esteemed panel. I sort of sat here thinking, "Ooh, and me." My career journey is relatively straightforward. So when I was about 13, I decided I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I think it was what I saw on the television that made me quite excited, and from that moment on, I just kind of pursued it. So standard school, A-levels, straight onto university, none of this sort of take a year out. Might live to regret that, I don't know, but I didn't. And then I managed to get a training contract with what is CMS. At the time it was Cameron McKenna. And that's kind of where my insolvency, as it was then, journey rather than turnaround journey started, because I did my training seats and insolvency was one of them, and I absolutely loved it. And the reason I loved it was it gave me an opportunity to work with a variety of stakeholders. I also worked with lots of different professional advisors, because you're working alongside bankers, accountants, as well as the company itself. So that sort of merrily carried on. I then went to Hong Kong for a little period. After the Asian market collapsed, they needed some English lawyer support. So I went out and worked with those colleagues. And while I was out there, my now husband proposed, and when I came back, because he didn't live in London, which is where I started, I moved to Bristol, and that's when I joined what is now Womble Bond Dickinson, and I spent 16 years with them doing doing insolvency, a lot of bank recovery work, and then had, I think one of your questions, there was any pivotal moments. Well, this is the pivotal moment more towards turnaround, because I took over the lead of the practice there, and about 2 weeks later we lost one of our key bank panel relationships, and new in sort of head of the team, and suddenly massive potential to lose revenue. I sort of went, ooh, okay, this is on me. What are we going to do about it? And so I started to diversify the practice. looking at supply chain, but more importantly on directors' duties, governance, boardroom advisory work. And it took quite a lot of work to sort of move that practice forward. But now, quite a number of years on, and another transition of firm to Foot Anstey, that's where I actually spend most of my time. So that's, in a nutshell, my turnaround journey. And of course, on the 1st of January this year, took over the TMA national president. So yeah, very happy to be here. Hopefully that's answered your question, Helen.
Thank you, Joanne. No, it's really interesting as well to hear how you did literally turn around sort of that really difficult situation and move ahead in a slightly different direction. So that's fantastic. Thank you. Could I come to Heidi next, please?
Hi, everybody. I'm Heidi Servino. It's so nice to be here, and I'm amazed and thrilled that I was asked to join this fabulous panel. I've been practicing in New York for 35 years. I did not know at the age of 13 that I wanted to be a lawyer. I instead told my mother I wanted to be either a rock star or an actress, and she said, "You will be a doctor or a lawyer." So there you have it. As is on my bio, I was blessed to have a mother who was one of 7 women out of 180 men in med school. And my parents met over a cadaver, and they got married right after med school. I'm one of 6 children, and needless to say, my mother was very tough. So she was like, there's no being a rock star, an actress, you will be a doctor, a lawyer. After college, I went and got my master's in clinical social work, which, believe it or not, has helped me greatly in this career. And I'm a licensed certified social worker. But after that, I found out there was a joint MSW JD program. I was too late to do that, but I went on to law school, which I absolutely loved, and started my career at Winston & Strawn. And my clinical social work background has really come in handy dealing with all sorts of people in this industry. But I'm blessed because there are so many fabulous women who have become lifelong friends. So I've had many inspiring moments, and I don't want to bore everybody with them, but I was very lucky that on the first day at Winston & Strawn, I was going into commercial litigation, and they needed somebody to go into bankruptcy, and they said, "Oh, you'll get into court quicker." Best decision I ever made. Love the whole networking, love all the people. It's amazing how we can go to a conference, we see all our friends. We are really blessed to be in this profession. I know there's lots of other panelists, or else I could talk for the whole hour. So go ahead.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. I love how your social work experience helps you, because we do sort of end up being a bit of a counselor sometimes, don't we, to our clients in this area. So Millie, would you be able to speak next?
Sure. So as was mentioned, I am from Canada. I'm from Toronto, and I've been practicing for about 30 years. And I never knew I wanted to be a lawyer, or certainly not in restructuring. I actually wanted to be a journalist. Ended up, for a variety of reasons, going to law school. And then joined the firm that I still am today, Blake Castles. And at that time, restructuring, I didn't know what that was. I think, frankly, many of the women of our era, law school didn't really teach about restructuring. And so I had no concept, other than maybe it had to do with lenders taking over people's homes, was probably the extent of my knowledge in terms of, insolvency, bankruptcy. And I ended up, for some strange reason, wanted to do constitutional law. I have no idea why now. And I ended up preferring the commercial side. And so I ended up in what was then called the Creditors' Rights Group, and ended up actually really doing just banking work for the first 2 years. And then one day, a senior partner came to my office and said, "I need you right now. I need you to come with me to a boardroom. We need to negotiate a deal, and it has to be negotiated today, signed up, because we have a court-imposed deadline." So I said, "Oh, okay." So I went over with him, and in a boardroom, locked boardroom, where all the relevant parties were at the table, and we negotiated till it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and we got it done. And from that moment on, I was hooked. the real time, real life consequences. I mean, if we didn't get this deal done, the company was going to shut down and hundreds of people were going to lose their jobs. And that somehow was weirdly invigorating. And I think it is for all of us, right? Because we work in such a high intensity, real life consequence situations every day. And if you don't love that, then you're sort of in the wrong area. And so, as I said, I got hooked from that moment on, and 30 years later, I'm still doing it.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I think it's still the case that restructuring never gets taught at law school. Most people come in as trainees and have sort of never really heard of it before, apart from what's in the papers. But Donatella, would you be able to go next? Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hi, yes, my name is Donatella. I'm Italian, I live in Italy, but I was born and raised in Brazil. And then we came to Italy, where I had my degree in law. Although, after hearing all your stories, it's very interesting to see that not all born as a lawyer. I was supposed to be a ballerina. Then I had a little accident when I was 17, so I changed my career. And I went to the law school in Milan and fell in love with criminal law. So I graduated as a white crime criminal lawyer. I started the profession here. Then for personal reasons, I went to US for a few years. And I went to Dorsey and Whitney in Minneapolis, practicing corporate law. And they brought me to meetings and taught me how to negotiate. And I saw my first probably cases of restructuring there. And I thought it was absolutely interesting and thrilling. So when I came back to Italy a few years later, I then went to Omaha, Nebraska, stayed there for a couple of years. Then I came back to Italy and I went back, I changed my practice and went back on corporate and civil law. Then in the law firm, there was the need of someone taking the lead of labor law practice. And I said, why not? Let's make another personal turnaround. So I made several in my life. And that's how I started. But I'm very happy now because, as was said before, it is a very stressful job. And if you love, you can do it. Otherwise, you better quit. We are always under pressure. We have to solve big problems, and usually the lives of many people are in our hands. So we have to think, and that's why I think that women are more are better in this job than men, because we usually think of the whole picture instead of just the piece that the client asks us.
Thank you. That actually brings me very nicely onto my next question, because although obviously this panel is about celebrating women's achievement in restructuring, and you're all fantastic examples of this, and there are many others, but historically this sector is one which is very male dominated. And so I would just really like to get your views on any particular challenges you think are faced by women in the sector, or indeed if you feel the sector has actually changed a lot over your time and over time of your careers. So Heidi, you've worked in this area for 35 years. Have you found that things have sort of changed a lot in that period?
So what's very interesting to me is that obviously a lot has changed, but I'm also shocked when I see that things really haven't changed. So I could still go to court in New York and be the only woman there, which I find shocking, utterly shocking. And it's sad to me that I'll be the only woman there. A lot of times I'm the only woman in meetings still, which is also shocking considering I've done this so long. What I do think is great that has changed since I started is that you now have, there was never a woman managing partner when I was starting out. There was never a bunch of women in a meeting, which you can get today. There was no mommy track, right? There was no, like, if you had a baby, you were going right back to work. I had a senior partner say to me, after I came back from maternity leave, and then, like, you know, a year later became pregnant again. And the senior partner said to me at a dinner in front of many people, clearly you're not serious about your career. And which would be actionable today, by the way, the Me Too movement, I'd be suing and I'd probably be retired based on that comment. Okay, but seriously, it is, when I look back and I think of everything that has been said to me that would never be said today, it's unbelievable. So while we're still a lot of times the only one in the room, we have women now making great strides. Women have to become the rainmakers, right? Women years ago were never the rainmakers. They never brought in clients. Now women are bringing in clients. Now we have a restructuring organization devoted to women. We have iWork. We have TMA Now. We have organizations devoted to women to help us thrive and prosper and become great in this profession. And that is what amazing that has changed in 35 years. I mean, we would go to a conference and not know anybody. Now we know by attending various conferences and going to things, we know there's going to be other women there. I mean, it would be one woman in a sea of, 200 blue blazers. And you don't have that anymore. And that's what's phenomenal. And the nice thing about restructuring and bankruptcy is that all the women help each other. And that is evident by the organizations that have been formed so women can help each other. And women have to continue to mentor and help each other so that we can all prosper in this field, which is a very difficult, demanding field. The demands on our time with children, all of it, but it can be done. I can honestly say that in my children, no one has gone to jail. So it's all good. That was always my goal when I was raising my kids and working 7 days a week. Please don't end up in jail, please. And no one did. So it's all good. They're all thriving. They're all working. It's all good. So it can be done, everybody.
That's fantastic. Joanne, what's your view on the situation in the UK? Is it sort of similar to Heidi?
I'm just going to pick up on that. I'm not sure I ever sort of thought, oh, I wish my kids don't go to jail, in the sense of that was my ambition. But actually, it's a really good thing. So mine have not been to jail either yet. So in the UK, I think it's quite interesting because I think there's probably a slight difference between the legal profession and maybe the other professional advisors we work with. So if I look around the various partnerships within the UK in the law firms, I actually see a lot of people kind of like me at fairly senior levels within the organizations. And I also see a lot of really great women coming through and making progress. So it is completely different to when I started out, and I celebrate that. I think it's amazing. When I look perhaps at the accountancy practices, and lots is going in, but particularly in our sort of turnaround, restructuring and insolvency market, some of the registered positions, license holders and things, I think there are fewer women. Some firms are making a huge effort and have got a really good stock of women, but some of the other firms I think have got progress still to make. But I share, Heidi, with you, when you walk into a room sort of 25, 30 years ago, well, 25, 26 years ago for me, I would have been the only woman in the room. Actually, that was a good thing because I was quite confident and everybody knew I'd been there. But now you walk into a room and there's a sea of faces, different ages, age groups, different genders, and that's lovely because you have better conversations, just much richer conversations. I don't think it's finished. I think we still have work to do as an industry, but we're in a much better place than certainly when I started.
I was asked to make coffee guys would come into the conference room and think that I was there to make the coffee, and I'd look around going, I don't know who's making coffee, but I'm not.
Yeah, it happened several times to me too in Italy. At the beginning of the profession for sure, but for when we have Japanese clients, this happens again today. But at the beginning of my profession, I was always the personal assistant of the lawyer. So when is the lawyer coming? I mean, we've been waiting for a while. We've been talking with you, but when the lawyer comes, you're already talking to the lawyer. When I was 39, I was turning 40. I went to the partner of the law firm I used to work with, and told him, well, I think it's even late now, but I want to become a partner of the association. And this were the agreements. And he told me that the law firm was not prepared, was not ready to have a woman among partners yet. So I left a few months later, and I came to the place where I am now. And the balance here is quite good. We're approximately 60% men and 40% women in the partnership. But in Italy, I am still quite often the only woman in the room for top level meetings. When there are meetings, of course, with clients, I'm talking of professional meetings. At a normal level, there are several women, but when the CEO closed the room, I am always the only one, and this is quite annoying in 2024.
Well,
Yeah,
hopefully,
I'd like to-
hopefully it will change.
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of the comments from a Canadian perspective. I graduated law school in 1992. At that time already, 50% of the women, of the class were women. And that's continued, right? So what is that? I can't do my math, 32 years ago. But we haven't seen that translate, right? It's 32 years ago at, law school graduating at 50% women, if not more. So definitely progress, as Joanne and Donatella and Heidi have mentioned, but there's still a long way to go. There's many times I'm the only woman in the room, only women on a call, sometimes not listened to, mansplained, all of that. And it's still, we still have obstacles, but we certainly have progressed from where we started. And, as Heidi mentioned, organizations like this, where there is a mutual understanding of our unique situations and the challenges that we face, I think is helpful. And it is inspiring. I mean, even if we hear some of the negative, it's nice to see people actually show how and talk about how they overcame that, and to give pointers to improve and to break down some of those obstacles that still exist, because they still exist. And so these, organizations like TMA now is extremely important to continuing that progress to hopefully eliminate those obstacles that are unique to women. I also just want on Joanne's comment about the fact that law is different in some ways in terms of the makeup, in terms of women, and in particular senior women. We see that particularly in Canada on the financial advisory side. I think part of that is they tend to have to go to clients who could be out of town, and that causes more particular stress for women with children, or who want to have children, because it's just obviously more challenging, physically at home, while lawyers tend not to travel as much for long periods of time. Because I know some of my financial advisory friends who are female, could be away for months at a client's, and that's not conducive to raising a young family, and that's very challenging. But maybe now post-pandemic, there's lots of things that came out of that pandemic. I think that are beneficial to women, and that is the ability to be able to work and transact business on a virtual basis and not necessarily have to be in person, and certainly not all the time or as much as it used to be in the past.
Oh, well, I also think that the firms have gotten better about adapting to women's schedules, that if they want to be on a different track, it's available where it wasn't available years ago. So before you always had to come back full time, now there is the availability to come back part-time and then part-time to a full-time as your children get older, as they're in school. So there's more adaptability by the professional firms to look at what the woman wants to do. And I think that's a great change.
Thank you. So moving on, I think our next topic was to look at the topic of building networks. And one thing that you mentioned earlier, Heidi, was that we need women to become rainmakers, because that's how you sort of get those leadership positions in the end. So I know you have a lot of views on this. I'd be grateful if you could share some of your views on networking. And
so having been at different firms and been in this field a long time, the only way that a woman has power is if she has clients. Because if she's being treated poorly at a firm or doesn't like the compensation, she can pick up and go. But if you don't have any clients, then you are just a service partner or a service person the rest of your life. So I was very lucky that I was told by a male partner years ago to start focusing on my brand and myself and working on getting clients and how am I going to do that? And it's overwhelming, and I have little kids, and how is their time in the day? And I was commuting into New York City, and I can remember like going, God, I can barely do anything for myself, let alone now you're telling me I have to get clients and I have to learn about bankruptcy law and I have to stay on top of cases and do it. And it's amazing. You just kind of do it, right? Women, whatever thrown at us, we just kind of deal with it. So everyone has a different path, how they want to get clients. For me, what worked for me was, because I had been an athlete my whole life, I noticed, especially in restructuring in New York, that all the guys played golf. And I'd be the only woman partner on a Friday in the office, because every male partner and every male associate was playing golf with clients. And they'd come back on a Monday and say that they had been invited to all these amazing golf courses and they're on all these boondoggles by major clients. The major banks were inviting them all over the country to play golf. And I'm like, I'm sitting in the office and you're all playing golf. And how did you get this deal? And how did you get that deal? So in my 40s with young children, I took up golf. And I know that sounds insane, but I had to do something. And I took up golf, and I would go to sign up at the TMA conferences for the golf outing. And I would be the only woman, of course. There's like 4 other women playing, and I'd be with 3 men. So I learned quickly that I should just buy drinks for everybody in the cart. And then they didn't care that I couldn't hit the ball. And I met private equity guys, hedge fund guys, banks. And to this day, because of sitting with them in a cart for 4 hours, they're forced to talk to you. And I have gotten amazing clients that way. And it's not the only way to go. I'm just using it as my example, but I can tell the women on this call that without clients, you have no power. And you need to get clients to have power. And I'm a big believer in helping women, giving them clients, helping them to get clients, helping them to retain clients, because it's very tough. Clients have a lot of choices to choose from with professionals, but you have to differentiate yourself. Like my kids will say, oh my God, you're on the phone again. I'm like, yes, I'm on the phone again, but this is why you have the life you have. So you have to do what's right for you. For me, it was something that I could do just because I love sports, and it was a combination of sports, being outside, and I was able to combine a lot of things that I like. And so it just happened to work for me, that it translated into clients. But once you meet one, you don't have to keep playing golf. You meet one, then you meet another, and you have to take people out to lunch. You have to take people out to dinner. You have to go to conferences. You have to get out of your zone and really put yourself out there. And I know it's scary because women are like, oh God, who is she? I can't tell you how many times people said, oh, she's blonde and blue eyes, and so she must be stupid. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, literally, people said that. So I can only tell all the women on this call to please get out of your comfort zone, try what you want to do, what you think will help you to get clients, and go for it. And you can't be afraid, because you're going to be rejected. And it's okay to be rejected, because you learn from failure. It becomes a growth opportunity. What did I do wrong in this one? And you go for it. But my message is, you need to become a rainmaker. And it takes a while, and it takes a long time, because that will give you the power to then be able to choose your own life.
I absolutely agree. Let me just add, you have, at least here, you have to become also kind of emotionally indispensable for the client. So you have a very close relationship with the client. You talk not only about job, you have to stay on the phone, and maybe just to talk about their problems on other issues. Maybe you help them with colleagues or friends to solve other problems that they have. As much as they understand that you are on their side, you are a partner and not only the lawyer, then you definitely catch the client. But without clients, women or men doing this job go nowhere. Absolutely, I totally agree with you.
I just wanted to add one supplemental comment on that. Somebody once said, and I don't recall whether it was at a conference or not, but they said, you need to, for women in particular, for the reasons that Heidi had mentioned, where, we just, with all the stuff we have going on in our lives, it's just one extra stuff that's piled on top of everything else, is that you have to treat business development and networking as a file. So it's like anything else you do in front of you, well, you got this file, and you got this matter, and you got that matter. That is also a matter. So it needs to be attended to. It needs to be prioritized when it needs to be prioritized. And you can't just treat it as if I'm going to do all my work first, and then if I have time, because often you don't actually have time if you have to allocate everything you need to do, you're going to have to prioritize. It'll never get done. And then you will be left, as Heidi said, being just the person that does all the work. And, frankly, if you're doing the work at night while everybody else is having dinner, wouldn't you rather be having dinner? Because that's what happens, right? The women just do the work. They just stay in their office. They do fabulous work, but they're working. So it's not like you do any actual less work. It's just what work you're doing. So are you doing business development and getting clients and getting power, as Heidi says, or you're just sitting doing the work and everybody else is getting credit for it and going to nice dinners, nice lunches, going to sporting events, going to theater and doing all that stuff, where you're just sitting back at the office doing all the work.
When I was thinking about this question, because we did have a bit of advance warning it was coming, I sort of tried to take myself back to when I first started and how I built my relationships, because I thought it might be helpful. And when I first started networking, I wasn't networking to win work. I didn't really understand that that's what I was ultimately trying to do. I was networking just to get to know people. And so actually building relationships, just getting to know somebody was really invaluable. And that comes to its fore later. And then as I got confident with that, I learned to talk to them a bit more about their work. What's going on in their firm, what's happening, what sectors. So I built knowledge then of different industries and environments. And then from there, I remember thinking about how can I take something with me to the conversation? So what can I give to that connection? Is it market intelligence? Is it a piece of thought leadership? What is it I can take? So I started preparing for my kind of networking discussions, and then I built out from there in terms of, you know, well, could I be confident enough at a networking event to actually present? So built a platform, and all of these incremental things actually is how you get to that I've got to win clients, because those conversations then suddenly turn into winning business. And I think there's a really important point. We've got huge networks now. We've got power of social media networks. How we use them and what we do with them, I think is going to be a massive differentiator for the next generation coming through, because there's real power in leveraging your network. Just because you know Fred or Sarah, they might know somebody else who knows somebody else, and the power of like the social media network is huge because you're mapped to thousands and thousands of people. And I think in my later career, I did a piece of work actually with a coach, well, a mentor, around relationship mapping, and it's fascinating because you can actually reach, if you open your mind and aspire to something, you've probably only like 1 or 2 steps removed from where you want to get to. So that's kind of how I started out, but I completely agree with everybody. It's all about winning clients, because you're only as good as the work you win, but you don't have to be that on day 1 or even year 3. It kind of comes with a whole career.
Thank you. That's really valuable advice. Sort of related to the topic of networking, but also just in general, do you have any tips or strategies for young women when it comes to asserting themselves and building their confidence and finding a voice, but both in these sort of networking situations, but also in situations such as meetings and so on, when often we can be, quite often the men can dominate?
What I found was what gave me confidence, right? Because you're a junior person or a mid-level person surrounded by the men, and you're going to be like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And what I found was something my dad had taught me, that knowledge is power. Knowledge frees you. So before I would go into a meeting, you know, I had the senior partner telling me, we're representing the bank. We have a meeting with the borrower. We may be filing, we'll be the secured creditor. So I would review the entire file, and I'll never forget, on a huge loan one time, I had to tell the senior partner that I don't think that the debtor moved, and we didn't perfect within the 6 months that you have to do under the UCC, because they moved and you have 6 months to refile the UCC. I, as the junior person, because I was the only one who had read the entire file, had to tell them that prior to the meeting. I had to tell the senior bankers, had to tell my boss. It was unbelievable. So my advice is, because obviously when you're starting out and you're younger, you know, you may not have the confidence, but the more knowledgeable you are, the more you know everything. A lot of the men bluster. They just go on and on. Oh yeah, and this happened. Well, that didn't really happen. If you know what happened, you can tell them, and that will give you confidence. And that way you can be, this is the way it is, guys, and you're wrong with what you're blustering about. So my advice to the younger people is, know your stuff, know the statute, know the financial stuff, know how the law interacts, know the file, know your client, and know the other side and the lawyers on the other side before the meeting. So prep yourself so that when you go into that meeting, you won't be intimidated, because you'll have more knowledge than anyone else in the room. And that will empower you. And that will take you through that meeting, because they can all go on and say what they want, but you're sitting there knowing everything, and they don't. And believe me, they don't know everything. Half the time, they're just like scantily looking at it right before the meeting. And I'm like, oh, this took me hours. What are you doing? And then they don't know. So that is my advice. Know your file, know your adversary, know your client.
On a more general level, my advice would be, don't expect opportunity to come to you. You need to go find it, and you need to ask. Because I see a lot with I see the difference between our male associates and our female associates. The male associates, sometimes I think, wow, that was a lot of, to come up and say, after being in practice for 2 weeks saying, oh, I hear you're planning this client seminar. I'd really like to help. And at first I think, wow, that's a bit forward. But guess what? I'm probably going to get him to help. And the women wouldn't say anything. And then sometimes they would get upset that they weren't given the opportunity. And I think even those who are well-intentioned, because I'm very well-intentioned in terms of being inclusive and trying to make sure that women get the opportunity, because our lives are so crazy and it's so intense, and we're usually working from fire to fire to fire, sometimes we just do what's in front of us and we make decisions based on what's the quickest and easiest path, right? And so if somebody is coming to me and saying, I'd love to help, or I'd love this opportunity, I hear you're doing X, I'm likely to give it to them just because I don't have time to think about anything else other than what's in front of me at the moment. And so if you see opportunities, don't be afraid to ask to be part of it. Don't just sit there and expect people. It's not because they're not wanting to, it's just they all have other things in their lives that they are dealing with on every single day. And as I said to one associate, and I'm sorry, but of all the things in my life that I need to deal with on a daily basis, you're not necessarily on the top. You need to remind me to move you from down here back into the top, and I just need to be reminded.
And I just want to add to that, because I agree with all those points. There's something about the vocabulary we use. So thinking about how we're framing something, if you've prepared and you're going to make 1 or 2 or 3 impactful points in a meeting, and you don't have to make a lot, you just have to land them with impact. You don't want to go a sort of, oh, I'm sorry, or I was just wondering, or just thinking out loud. Those kind of things already sort of they put an impression in somebody's mind that you're not confident necessarily about what you're putting forward. So if you've done your prep, as Heidi's suggesting, and you've asked for your opportunity, you kind of need to go into that meeting confident and just present your thing and do it without apologizing or making an excuse. Just put it out there, and you'll be surprised actually how you can change a conversation or move something in a different or more positive direction. And the other thing I've done sometimes, if I've not been heard in a meeting, is I've actually followed up a point by email afterwards with somebody so that it's down on the record, because sometimes some people need time to go away and think about something before they recognize it as a good point. And that's just human nature. Not all of us work in the same way.
And just to add on to that, and we were talking, Joan, it made me think, you want to be the one that's indispensable to the file, so that the client, the senior partner, everyone, you're the go-to because you're the one who knows it, right? So the more indispensable you are, the more visible you become. And the more everybody gets to know you on the case. So the opposing counsel's calling you, the opposing FA may need you. And that way you get to meet more and more people. So you become the indispensable one, everyone goes to you. And that increases your visibility, which then increases your visibility to then eventually get clients.
Okay, there's a, sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of you, of course, because probably experiences are all the same all over the world. I would definitely recommend that be ambitious, much more ambitious than they usually are. Mainly when we just graduate, we think as women that we have to wait, while men ask. They just ask. Ask for promotion, ask for salaries, ask for more interesting files, ask to come to meetings, and women tend to wait for the others to notice and acknowledge how valuable they are. So it's a sort of probably of social thing or because of how we are raised. I don't know. For sure, don't be ashamed to remark how valuable you are. Remember always to ask and try to be indispensable, exactly how Heidi was saying before, because so everyone will remember you, will notice you. And it's a fact that we have to be always a little bit more prepared, a little bit more on the case, a little bit forward respect to men, but this is still the case.
We have a couple of questions in the chat, which I'll tend to because you've only got 10 minutes left. But one of these is then, do you feel there's any areas where being a woman is an advantage in this industry?
Do you want me to take that? I think it can be hugely advantageous. So I do a lot of boardroom work, and I think one of the other panelists, forgive me, I can't remember who, said that they're often, oh, it was Donatello, often senior level CEO exec suite, the only woman in the room. Actually, that can be hugely powerful, because when you're talking about something, there's often an ability to sort of just tune into, well, it's emotional intelligence really, isn't it? Tune into the dynamics around the table. And sometimes when things are getting a bit heated, you can be quite a powerful source to sort of calm it down, or just help relationships move to a better place. And also when we're dealing with businesses in distress, often, you know, you've got somebody whose life work is about to potentially collapse and you're trying to turn them around, helping them actually be realistic about what's possible, because there are complete extremes sometimes. Some have got their head in the sand. If I close my eyes, I can't, it's not happening. And some are like, oh, but my business is still worth millions and trillions and it's amazing. And actually just getting that balance, building that trust. I think I'm not saying men are not good at it, but it is a skill that a lot of women have, and that's a real strength. And you know, I do see that as a powerful tool, certainly in the boardrooms. And it doesn't just have to be boardrooms, the meetings in which we conduct ourselves.
We have one more question very quickly, and then we'll wrap up. But this is, do you have any tips about how we can be better allies for junior female members of our teams?
I'll take that. You have to include them. You have to bring them. You have to include them. When you're going to lunch with a client, you've got to bring them along. You have to tell them, put your pen down, come with me. This is what we're going to do. You have to encourage them to go to networking events. It's the constant. It's like a day doesn't go by that I'm saying, let's do this, let's do that. And to everybody, not just the people on my restructuring team. Even to the junior women partners, have to encourage them to get out. You have to go. You can't just be sitting in the office. So it's like daily thing to encourage, support, make sure we have the budgets at the firm to let them do all of that.
And mentorship and sponsorship are very important too.
And that's a really nice opportunity, if I may, to comment. So TMA UK, so anybody on the call that's a member of TMA UK, runs a mentor scheme. So members are mentors for anybody who's a member who wants to be a mentee, and it might be around career, might be about a particular situation you're sort of dealing with in the work environment. Obviously it's confidential and you have to be careful, we're not talking about cases, but themes we can tackle, and it's certainly the mentees that are on that scheme are really taking great benefit from it. So it's open, and we're looking out for more mentors and mentees. So sorry for that shameless plug, but I think it's a great thing TMA UK are doing.
Okay, fantastic. So finally, I just want to wrap up with your one sentence takeaway that you would like the audience to go home with. If there's one point you want people to remember from this session, what would it be? Heidi, your microphone's off, so I'm coming to you first.
Okay, great. My one takeaway would be believe in yourself and don't be afraid and go for it.
Okay. Joanne?
Oh, well, I've written this down. So I'm going to follow
I
Heidi.
wrote nothing down.
No,
Okay.
no, I've written this down, right? So it's your career shaped by you, for you. You control it, you own it. And I ended, go for it.
Fantastic. Donatella?
My takeaway would be very similar. Never forget yourself. You are not your job, but you bring yourself in your job.
Millie?
Okay, so it's me. Mine would be, I think, repeating what I said earlier, treat business development, networking, profile building as a file or a client. You need to nurture it.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I'll just hand back to Anna now briefly before we move into breakout rooms.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I truly enjoyed listening to you all. I feel that I learned a lot, and I'm inspired to be brave and have my own large book of business so that I have power and independence. Thank you again. We have a slide about our TMA Europe event that is scheduled for 10th of June to 12th of June. And as part of that event, we'll have TMA Now breakfast. We're planning on having a keynote speaker who will also inspire us ahead of the TMA Now conference. And TMA Now will be present and visible during the conference. More information will be available on the TMA Europe website, so please take a look. And it would be great if you could join us for the conference. Also, keep an eye on the TMI website. We'll have more power hours in the future. And also, TMA Now UK has a very interesting schedule of events that are well attended. So now I would like to invite everyone to stay with us a little bit longer. We'll have breakout rooms and we can talk to the speakers who are able to stay. And hopefully we can get to know you a little bit more. Thank you.